We are now. Thank you. Welcome to the Wareham Conservation Commission meeting of January 5th, 2022. Before we start the hearing, for the record, I want to indicate that I have viewed the December 15th minutes meeting, and Mr. Bichette will be developing a document for everybody to sign indicating they viewed the meeting they missed going forward, so that will be on the record that they are up to date with what happened at the meeting they missed. So I did view that, and I thank everybody. That's the quickest meeting I've ever had involved with, and that's because I wasn't here. So I appreciate everybody. That was a very quick meeting.
So you weren't really involved?
No, I was not. That's why it was a quick meeting. I got that point, yes. Before we start with the public hearings, we have received a request for continuation for LSC Hydro, Deborah Kosovitz, Mike Connolly, David Andre have given us a formal request for continuance. Don't know about the other two until we get to the hearing. So if you'd like to start, Ron, with the first hearing.
Pursuant to the provisions of the Massachusetts Wetland Protection Act, General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Wareham Wetland Protective Bylaw, Division 6, a public hearing will be held in Room 320, Wareham Multi-Service Center, 48 Marion Road, Wareham, Mass., or via Zoom if in-person meetings are deemed to be inappropriate due to COVID-19. On Wednesday, January 5th, 2022 at 6:30 p.m. On the notice of intent for Town of Wareham, care of GAF Engineering, Inc., 266 Main Street, Wareham, Mass. 02571, to redevelop the parking lot at Heinz Field. Improvements consist of the installation of pavement, curbing, landscape, lighting, signage, and a vegetated filter strip located on Assessors Map 1, Lot 1025, Heinz Field, 28 East Central Avenue, Wareham, Massachusetts.
Thank you. And who's here to represent this project? Please say.
Bill Madden from GAF Engineering here on behalf of the town of Wareham.
Okay. Dave?
Thank you.
And I gather Ken's here. Okay. Mr. Bichette will read to the project.
This project is at Heinz Field in Onset, and this project involves the construction of a parking lot in the buffer zone to bordering vegetated wetland and within a coastal flood zone. A 94th space parking lot is proposed on what is known as Heinz Field, and this work would be approximately 35 feet from the edge of the wetland and within coastal flood zone AE elevation 14. Landscape islands, curbing, lighting, and sidewalks are also proposed as part of the project. The entire project was described in the application as a redevelopment project. Redevelopment projects don't have to meet the same standards for stormwater treatment as new development does. So the proposed stormwater treatment for this proposed parking lot is somewhat limited. I disagree with the project description. There is a portion of the site that may be characterized as redevelopment, but a large portion of the site would be considered new development, and therefore,
Thank you.
normal stormwater treatment standards would have to be met. The current proposed stormwater structures do not meet the standard for new development. The project description also states that the wetland, which is a salt marsh, does not have an outlet. I'm not sure that that's the case. I believe there is a pipe that connects this wetland to other wetland, and that this is not necessarily an isolated wetland. This project would be very close to the wetland and would direct significant stormwater runoff towards the wetland area. Therefore, stormwater treatment structures need to be improved, in my opinion, versus what's been proposed. The project did get a DEP file number, but at this time I would recommend a continuance of the hearing to address the stormwater issues and get a revised plan.
Thank you. Bill, comments, please.
Yeah. Sorry about that. Yeah, Dave, I think, is correct in a number of the comments that he made on the site. I think first and foremost, it's a very difficult site. For the most part, it is a site that's been used historically in Onset for parking. What we tried to do is indicate that the portions of the site that would be subject to the redevelopment standards of the regulation. Dave was correct. We did show a portion of some work up here. This is the existing conditions plan that I have, the first one up here. I didn't bring a full, I do have a full set if we need it. I gave each one of the members a half size. But this portion over here to the, I guess it would be to the south west, southeast. Southeast is a portion of the site that is not part of the redeveloped area. I think we show pretty much where the parking is and where the disturbed areas are. It's easily identifiable with the paved area over here, but in this area here, it's predominantly gravel that's been parked on. Total site is around, I don't know, 57,000 square feet. And there's roughly 7,000 square feet of area over here that would not be considered redevelopment, as Dave pointed out. Stormwater management on this site is pretty challenging in general due to the flat topography of it. It ranges from elevation, say, elevation 6 to 3 in the back, so it is very low. It is in the coastal flood zone, as Dave has indicated. The wetland system that we had flagged by Environmental Consulting Restoration really is at the back of the cut portion of the field, or the managed portion of the field, and I think where you see the flag in that back portion is where the wetland flag boundary is located. So that's where the wetland is, but everything flows to that wetland. We did do some research, we do have some very old files. We have not been able to determine whether there's any inlets or outlets into that wetland area. And I think when you look at it in context of the area as a whole, as shown on the locust sheet on the plan, that is a pretty low-lying area within a densely developed portion of town. And to me, it reflects an area where perhaps drainage is being deposited as opposed to drainage being taken away from it. I mean, one of the first things that I would look at is where would that water go, and how would it get to any other location other than that low area. It just seems that it wouldn't be real practical to have it piped from that centralized location to either that cove behind, Shell Point Cove, or into Onset Bay over by the boat ramp at 11th or 12th. So we did look for some of that data. We have not been able to uncover anything that shows us. Otherwise, we looked at the Buzzards Bay Coalition mapping that they have of structures and what have you, and they noted a couple of things, but there were no outfalls noted on the plan. So we'll take Dave's suggestion and look a little more closely for that between now and the next meeting. I don't know how successful we will be, but we will put a good effort in to make that determination. I did speak with Dave Menard about it. He doesn't have any real knowledge of any piping or structures that would drain that area away, but nevertheless, we'll go to the effort that we need to try to determine what's going on there. I don't know what else to do other than make that effort, contact the sources that we have available, evaluate that site, how it sits in the landscape of things, and draw some conclusions from that. So anyway, that's what we will look at. But anyway, this is our site that we're dealing with. It's roughly 57,000 square feet, paved portion over here. The The access comes off of Wareham Street, and that's pretty much what we have shown on that plan. This next sheet indicates the layout of the parking lot. As stated, it's a 94 stall parking layout. All the spaces are currently sized to meet the zoning requirements. Are 9.5 feet wide, and I think it's 19 feet in length. We show a total of 94. Driveway access points are 24 feet wide as required by zoning, so the impervious area that we're showing on the plan really boils down to the minimum area required by zoning. I suppose if we wanted to increase the parking stall size, it may result in a reduction of spaces, but not necessarily a reduction in the entire impact on the site. So we show the parking field. We have islands with some lighting on the four corners. We think it's important to place a little bit of lighting on the site for predominantly the off-seasonal use. We show four handicap spots by the main entrance. That's what would be required by the ADA accessibility code due to the number of stalls or spaces that are provided on the site. We do show some bituminous concrete curb that bounds the parking fields, and we also have a landscape plan that we have placed the landscaping on the site that's required under the zoning bylaw as well. So we like to believe that we're in compliance with zoning. We didn't see that there was any reason that we should be doing something other than what zoning requires on the site. So that's what we chose to do. Another little feature that's not within the buffer zone or within the parking field itself is a bus stop that GATRA would like to relocate on the site. So we've selected a place that was adjacent to the sidewalk, adjacent to a crosswalk, a place where the bus could pull over. And I think GATRA have they looked at it? I think they have, right?
Yeah, they've looked at Ken Buckland. They have looked at it and agreed that this is a good location for the bus stop.
So with all that, with our impervious surfaces and what have you, there's a need to provide some method of stormwater management, some drainage on the site. So what we chose to do was essentially follow the existing grade of the site in its current state and pitch it from, say, Onset Ave to the back end, and provide an infiltration trench at the level spreader, if you will, at the end of the parking lot. We didn't show any curbing or berm at that location because you did want the water to free flow from the parking surface into the trench. And we did show wheel stops on those stalls, only to prevent the people from driving into that stone trench and beyond, for that matter. Show erosion control at pretty much the perimeter of the site. We also were seeking a waiver for the activity within the 50-foot no activity zone. We didn't consider the project a residential project. It would be more of a commercial project, and we felt that where it has public benefit, I mean, the whole purpose of the project is to provide parking for the general public. So in the context of the bylaw and the statement that's in there about providing some relief in the form of a waiver to do some activities within that 50-foot zone, we felt that that you might want to consider that in this particular instance. So we did, I think, make that request as well. So essentially, that's pretty much the overview of the site. We were asked to put a couple of oversized vehicle or trailer parking stalls on the site. So we looked at just coming in from Wareham and being able to place those 40-foot-long stalls there. They could be for buses, for example, in the summer, if there were tourists coming into onset rather, or they could be used perhaps for even overflow parking for boat trailers that people might be putting in the water down at the onset ramp down by Dummy Bridge. So that's really what we have proposed here. I think that Dave was correct. When we looked at the redevelopment portion, I just, for a brief discussion with Dave, looks like the redevelopment portion only would extend up to the tree line where it's actively used. Looks like that we have about 7,000 square feet of area, and we'll look at that a little more closely. It could be a little more than what we're showing on the plan, and depending upon how we might choose to deal with that stormwater, we might actually put a little bit more, take a little bit more of this area and maybe break the grade at this curb line and try to shed things this way and keep it further away from the wetland system and try to comply to the degree we need to for stormwater management. With the depth of groundwater and the soils that are on the site, they're poor soils, as poor as we can get. And with the depth of groundwater, there are not a tremendous amount of options for stormwater treatment. So we think that with respect to the redevelopment elements, we're able to improve existing conditions simply by virtue of placing some sort of drainage on the site, as well as some landscape islands, improving the overall features at the property. So they would, I think, taken collectively, result in an improvement to that area. I don't think it's disputable, in my view anyway, that it would not be considered an improvement, irrespective of the fact that we are adding some impervious surface there. But it just seems to us that for a municipal parking lot, the town would be best served by a hard surfaced parking lot, one that's easier to maintain than, say, gravel or crushed stone, things of that nature. I think crushed stone or gravel or wrap, something along those lines, that just is a little messier, and I don't know if the tracking of that all around onset is something they'd like to see, or anybody would like to see for that matter. Stones, I'm not a big fan of. For kids like to throw stones, and I would prefer not to see them throwing them around a parking lot where cars are there. And in fact, this the trench that we're looking to install at the end of the parking field is really designed to use either 1/8 inch crushed stone, very small stone, or pea stone. And the idea is to let that water infiltrate into the ground, overflow out of it, and then flow across this, turfed area, grassed area, existing area into the neighboring wetland. So that's really what we have so far on this. And I'll gladly entertain any questions you may have.
Mr. Buckland, anything to add?
Just that this project is one that's being funded for the most part by the Shared Streets program from MassDOT. It's receiving $91,000 for a $120,000 project. One of the things that they won't pay for is the paving of the surface. So that'll be a cost that's to be taken over by the town. But a big portion of this was the idea that it can be a satellite parking area with the bus service into the village of Onset and the beach. So we're talking about something that is going to facilitate less congestion in Onset and less illegal parking that could be in resource areas elsewhere around the village.
Now, you said, what do you expect to pave the parking lot with? What type of material?
Asphalt.
Not reconstituted or just reused stuff like there's now? You real true macadam, I mean.
That's
Yeah.
the intent at this time, yes.
Okay, and I'm going to ask one other question before I ask the board. this has been a free parking area for several years. Do you expect a paved parking lot to bring more people to use this facility?
Yes, the idea of having a recognized bus stop and a paved parking area that makes it easier to park and walk over to the bus, catch a bus, would be,
Or across the street to the playground?
or across the street to the
'Cause
local
there is
playground,
a-
that's correct, yes.
There's a crosswalk there.
There is, that's
Okay.
right.
All right. To the questions from the board. Carol?
No questions.
Ron?
I have a couple of questions, but I do have the questions from the two members that aren't here. Do we want to ask those two, or how do we want to
Well,
handle
we'll
that?
ask the board, and then we'll bring up the questions
Okay.
that Denise and Alyssa has asked for. Okay.
So a couple of questions that I have is this going to be 100% free parking year-round, or is there going to be permits required, parking meters? Is there going to be any type of revenue for the town for
That's
this lot?
outside of our scope.
Okay, okay, all right, so, as far as the asphalt's concerned, I know we talk about, full asphalt. Has there been consideration to doing a pervious asphalt, like a popcorn asphalt, to help with the water runoff? I know we talked about the drainage that you're talking about down toward the end, but has there been consideration to looking into that? I know it's more expensive, but, would runoff-wise, that's obviously a big concern with the amount of paving that's gonna happen. So has there been consideration for that, or has that not even been considered?
No, we looked into that. The pavement cross-section for porous pavement is pretty heavy, and there is a cost associated with that. I think that what we will likely do is evaluate how we might want to treat the other area that's not considered redevelopment, and see if we can utilize some of those techniques, best management practices, for stormwater disposal up in there. But, it's difficult to use that porous pavement in a lot of instances. Typically what we would do, and this is just the way I would think, is that I prefer not to use travel lanes for the porous pavement, only because there's a lot of traffic. It has a tendency to knead the asphalt together and really compact things, drive the sand and the dirt and debris into the parking lot, into that void space. And typically, we find, at least my experience is that if you use the parking stalls in even more remote area parking stalls as your porous pavement, that there's a little more longevity in it, and it works out fairly well. So, yeah, we looked at it. We didn't think it would really fill the bill here. We knew cost was an issue, but I think now that we have to better assess that non-redevelopment portion, that it may find its way back into the scheme of things.
What about access? Is it gonna just be single entrance access, or we gonna have multiple entrances?
Well, we have double entrances. We have one here off of 10th, which might be considered the main access, and then off of Wareham Ave, we have the secondary access. So there is an ability to come through here and either enter from one or the other and exit. So there's two 24-foot wide access points to the lot.
Okay, that's it, thank you.
Kwame?
Yeah, so where are the water runoff for like the basins? Where are those again?
What we've done is we're trying to let the water just flow by sheet flow from the high portion of the site down to the back and direct it all into this trench. So that trench will receive and absorb as much water as it's capable of receiving. They're poor soils, so we're not expecting a tremendous amount of infiltration at all. But that's what the desire is that at least we'll be able to manage the first flush of runoff coming off that parking lot, treat it in that trench, and have the overflow just allow it to continue on. We think it's a vast improvement over just the gravel parking lot that sheet flows across the complete site and into the neighboring wetland.
It'll be a level spreader type of drainage, so that there's no point of erosion that can occur either from a point source.
Anything else?
No, thank you.
Michael?
Okay, not at this time, thank you.
I have some before we go to the questions that were submitted. On Plan 5 of 7, it talks about a catch basin grate. Where, I couldn't find it anyplace on here. See it in the,
Here?
is that what it is?
Yeah, we said to install a silt sack in the catch basin grate prior to the start of the work. So that's the street drainage system.
That's the street, okay.
In Wareham Ave that we're just, you know,
Okay. In that lower right corner, how many of these trees and shrubs will have to be removed to accommodate the parking?
this corner here.
Yeah,
It looks like we'd be clearing that back, almost 30 feet or so.
okay. In the upper right corner, where there is no parking being planned next to the big vehicle, the big trailer parking, that will stay green?
Where I'm actually looking at that to be used as a rain garden or some stormwater
Is a
management.
stormwater
piece.
retention
Yes.
piece
Yeah.
to take the water off of the undeveloped
Correct.
component of the plan. I guess, talk to me about your plant selection. Who's gonna maintain the hydrangeas and the grasses? They've got to be taken care of.
Well,
can't-
there's a note on the cover sheet
Yep.
on the second page. It says the garden club would be, that's a joke.
I did not see that. I've heard that before.
No, I can't pass that message on to somebody afterwards, you
Oh,
know.
no. If anybody's listening.
No, it's a good, it's a.
If you're gonna put grasses in, grasses have to be clipped.
Every year.
Yeah.
Everything requires a certain degree of maintenance, and, you know, it's a good point. You know, we have noticed, at least I have noticed throughout the town, the garden club does do quite a bit of it. I'm not suggesting they should be doing such a large site like this. This is a big site. So I don't know whether, you know, how that's going to be maintained. We haven't
So-
really discussed that.
And so municipal maintenance hasn't said we would be trimming the trees and cutting the grasses and doing the hydrangeas. Now, I'm concerned about the 4-foot wide pea stone trench, 2 feet deep. Who's gonna take all the trash that's gonna flow down there from the water? Keeping that clean and make it still continue to be a usable place to catch the runoff. I mean, that's.
It's
have
gonna
you-
require, it will require maintenance, and, you know, where it's a town, facility, I would think the town would be responsible for that level of maintenance. I think the operation maintenance plan might call for that to be addressed, say 4 times per year, or when material collects on the top of it. I think the detail that we showed here, put some geotextile fabric below, 2 inches below the top layer, so in the event that top layer became very contaminated, the entire layer could be removed and replaced without having to deal with the underlying, 22
Yeah,
inches.
It certainly wouldn't take much for cigarette butts to accumulate in the top 2 inches of that runoff.
No,
Have you considered putting a short fence or a catch fence to try to keep the debris from coming into this runoff area?
Did not, but we can consider that.
Because if you use something like a chicken wire or something to keep the big things out from flowing in there, it won't stop the cigarette butts or the nips, but that's all right. I think that handles my questions right now. Let me just double check my notes. This is a comment. When I was at the site, I saw a bunch of car tracks, vehicle tracks, running across the whole length of the parking area. I believe somebody is using this site to get in and out of the backside of their property. Has anybody contacted this group to say you can't, your cars or trucks parked won't be able to go across this anymore because of the berm?
I have, no one from my office is contacted, but we're cognizant of the
You have
situation.
seen the tracks? Yeah. especially in the mud. Okay. Okay, Ron, would you like to go over the questions that pertain to conservation that have been asked by Denise and Alyssa?
Absolutely, I will filter through here. We already talked about the first question is not pertinent to us. We talked about entrances. They were asking if it was going to be off of East Central and Onset Ave, but you answered that. Crosswalk for Lopes Park, I think that was answered too. That there's going to be a crosswalk from the parking facility to the park, correct?
Correct.
That crosswalk exists now.
It's existing.
Okay. The lighting that's going to be used.
That's outside of us.
Okay. All right.
It'll be dark sky compliant.
Okay.
We'll meet all the zoning requirements for lighting.
Okay. Landscaping, that was mentioned about that. That's a question that was brought up. What is the vegetative filter? Is one of the questions that they've brought up.
The vegetated filter is supposed to be the area from the back side of the level spreader to the.
Okay,
to
so
the wetland.
that green space
Yes.
to the wetland, okay. Usage and upkeep, we kind of talked about that too. Not imposing on wetlands that appear to be adjacent. Fencing versus boulders. They would prefer boulders for aesthetic and maintenance. I think we talked about runoff to the wetland. Pervious versus non-pervious materials was brought up and mentioned. They had a question about a shed that's on number 2 East Central Ave. Is that part of the park?
No,
This
that
shed
is,
right
that is a violation that's come before us and it's being moved.
Okay.
It was built in the wetlands without permission.
And you brought up that you
It's
asked.
not,
Not in the wetlands.
it's not East Central Ave at all. I think, isn't that Wareham?
Wareham Ave.
So I'm not sure where East Central Ave came from. Okay,
And then we talked about it's been used predominantly in years for free parking. So
yep.
that's all the questions on from them on this project.
Okay, is there anybody in the audience who would like to make a statement to this project pertaining to our wetland bylaws? I'm seeing none. We're going to,
Question.
sorry?
I had one more question.
You have, okay.
Just quickly wanted to ask, is this something that's going to have to come before the planning board for this type of project, or is this the only permitting review that would need to take place?
As far as we know, this is the only permitting review we need.
Okay.
So we will be coming back for some more discussion on stormwater mitigation, correct?
Yes.
And there's nobody wants to comment on it, so please,
Motion to continue the hearing.
a motion to continue until.
Second.
Second.
On-
January 19th is our next meeting.
Thank you.
Okay. Motion to continue to January 19th.
Second?
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstain.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Next one, please.
Pursuant to the provisions of the Massachusetts Wetland Protection Act, General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Wareham Wetland Protective Bylaws, Division 6,
Thank you.
a public hearing will be held in room 320, Wareham Multi-Service Center, 48 Marion Road, Wareham, Mass., or via Zoom if in-person meetings are deemed to be inappropriate due to COVID-19 on Wednesday, January 5th, 2022 at 6:30 p.m. On the notice of intent for Warren QOZB LLC, care of GAF Engineering Inc., 266 Main Street, Wareham, Mass. 02571, to construct a restaurant with deck, an open pavilion, and a commercial/retail building with associated parking lot, utilities, and landscaping, located on Assessors Map 47, lots 1124, 1125, and 1126, 59 Main Street, Wareham, Massachusetts.
And for the record, please identify yourself.
I'm Bill Madden from GAF Engineering here on behalf of Warren QOZB LLC.
Thank you. And this is for the last one. This is, no, this is, that's mine.
I apologize for not having half sizes.
That's all right.
Actually forgot to print them.
Okay, Okay, Mr. Bichette, it's up. You're up.
Okay, so this project is at 59 Main Street, and this project involves the construction of a restaurant and other buildings, a parking lot, utilities, and associated site work within riverfront area and within a coastal flood zone. A 65 by 100-foot restaurant building with attached 25 by 60-foot deck is proposed, approximately 30 feet from the edge of the bulkhead along the Wareham River, and this is also within Zone AE Elevation 16. Also proposed within these areas is a 26 by 60-foot pavilion, another 1,200 square foot building, a 46-space parking lot, and other utility and landscape features. The commission also approved docks for a marina at this site under a separate order of conditions several months ago. So there's a question to me as to, is the parking sufficient for all of the uses that are being proposed at this site? They are proposing underground stormwater structures to handle runoff from the site. Would these also take the runoff from the buildings as well? I did have a question specifically about how those systems would function and if that could be explained. Control and treatment of stormwater would be an important issue at the site, being right on the river. This project is going to be reviewed by the town's consulting engineer, so that review has not been completed as of this time. We did get a DEP file number for this project, so at this point in time, I would say that we don't have the comments from the town's consulting engineer, so we don't have, in my opinion, the information needed to make a decision on this, so I would recommend the hearing be continued until such time that that review is completed, so we can have that information to review.
Okay. Bill, any comments?
Do you want me to just explain what the whole site looks like?
I'm sure there's some people here that are interested in it, yes?
Okay. Let's see. Interesting site. It's prior site of Greer Lumber. You're probably all familiar with all the buildings that were once sited on that piece of property. This site is really a 100% redevelopment project. The entire site had been previously altered with buildings, parking, storage areas. Whether it was Greer Lumber or the last owner that was down there, it was pretty heavily used. I'll start first with the marina that Dave was talking about. There was a marina approved under a separate license, a separate notice of intent that was filed. We advanced that to DEP and obtained a Chapter 91 waterways license for the marina that was originally approved by the Conservation Commission. Since that time, the owner has decided to modify modify the layout of the marina, and we've been in contact with DEP, and because that marina is in what they call a zone of reconfiguration, we're able to reconfigure the floats, the same square footage of floats or less, not more, within the reconfiguration zone. So we have an approval from DEP to be able to do that. We need to come back to Conservation to alter that plan. These plans, if you look on these plans, in lighter text, they indicate the layout that we're trying to achieve now, not the one that the commission.
It did seem a little odd.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I mean, there's quite a few moving parts on this one, and they change readily. So it's part of our task. Another question Dave had was parking, and I guess it all relates to stormwater management when we get down to it, but there's a parking schedule on the plan. It indicates that we have the required parking for the 24 slip marina under zoning. 1/2 parking space per boat slip is required, so there's 12 spaces required for that. The restaurant of 150 seats requires one space per 5 seats. So there's 30 spaces provided for the restaurant. So that puts us up to like 42, and then the 1,200 square foot commercial building is 1 per 300 square feet, so that's 4 more. So we have 46 spaces on the site that match up to what's required by zoning. I'll have you know that a question regarding parking was presented to us by the planning board on that. So I don't know what it means for this site. It might mean something someplace else, but we're able to comply with zoning there. As Dave pointed out, the site is, this is sheet number 3, just indicates the existing site the way it is. There's a bulkhead that holds back the land from the Wareham River. That's an existing bulkhead. The marina is going to operate off of that. And then what we do is we show the site the way it exists today. There's also a line here of historic fill. The historic mean high water line is drawn straight across here. It comes from a document that was prepared by BSC Group that indicated all the historic tide lines, high tide lines in pretty much the entire state. So we're not able to do any work in that particular area on the site. If we were to do something there, I think that we'd be into a different level of permitting with DEP. So we intentionally avoided doing anything with placement of buildings or site improvements, anything landward of that line. But as Dave pointed out, it is all in the AE 17 flood zone. And all the construction of the buildings would need to comply with the FEMA regulations.
We're AE 16? Did I hear that right?
I think it was 17.
Is it 17?
Yeah,
17?
I don't know, that elevation 17 has been standing out of my mind, so I'm pretty sure that's what it is. This is the site plan that indicates the building, the pavilion, and the small commercial building. Here's the 65 by 100 restaurant building. The entrance is in the front of it. We have a loading area on the side. We talked about our drainage. We do want to try to get the bulk of our drainage into the infiltration units, although I don't think it's terribly problematic to have runoff from downspouts, if it's properly controlled, discharge at grade, provided that they're not on an area where people are walking or vehicles are parking. So we have just basically shown that as being deposited at grade, although we did consider putting some in those drainage basins. So you can see this gazebo, or well, pavilion, it's been reduced in size. The revised plans that will provide conservation will show a smaller pavilion than what is on the plan that's in front of you now. And the 1,200 square foot commercial building is far to the, to the north on this site. But the entrances come in on each end of the site, and we're able to provide the required number of parking spaces. There's a handicap ramp that, we've cited our handicap parking spaces directly across from the entrance. The handicap ramp is a switchback ramp because we're coming up roughly 5 feet from existing grade. So we need along the lines of 60 feet of ramp to come up the proper height. There's also a set of stairs for patrons to enter the restaurant as well, and that's, they can walk along this sidewalk and come into that building. I don't know, has anybody you've been to the Black Whale? Anybody in New Bedford? So, I mean, this is very similar to the way the entrance is set up of theirs. I mean, their stairs come off the front, to the front, but their ramp and switchback ramp next to a deck, it just, it's very similar. This, the stone line trench, we're dealing with stormwater in a similar manner as the Heinz Field job. So what we're doing is we're sheeting all of our water down to this another one of these infiltration level spreader type trenches. The difference between this one and the one on the last job is this one will be, will have a perforated pipe located within it. Within that pipe, we're gonna tee off of that and go to two separate infiltration beds that will be below the grade in the grassed areas. So we're looking to take care of all of our TSS in this area and put the bulk stormwater into those infiltration beds. Again, where it's a redevelopment project, you know, we don't need to meet the standards to the full extent, although we do have to improve existing conditions. I think we do that. We're showing our curbing or berm at the end of these parking stalls, so we're putting a number of 5-foot or 4-foot slots in that curb so that the water won't be taking just one path into the stone trench, but several paths into it, and then find its way into those infiltration chambers. So that's what we're kind of doing there. The site is served obviously by town water, town sewer, where we have a restaurant. There's a large grease trap here. If there is to be an ice cream shop or something along those lines at the commercial building, we've indicated another grease trap to be located on the northerly end of the site. That's pretty much it. I think we do improve existing conditions. All the construction will be FEMA flood zone compliant construction, and the structural engineers continue to work on the plans. Our footprints are all locked up pretty tight, so the plan that you have before you is the footprint that everything will be operating under. So let's see, we had water quality runoff from the buildings, parking, and the docks. So that's pretty much what we have on that.
I'll ask the board if they have any questions, because I have some and I'll wait for them. Kwame, I'll start with you.
Yeah, it looks like it's going to be an awesome type of environment when it's all said and done. But when in the back of the structures you have landscaping, and what does that consist of, basically? That's my first question.
Page 7 of the plan.
Oh, it is on page 7?
Again, grasses.
Oh, okay.
These sheets are so big.
I know.
Yeah, the landscaping the landscaping that we're proposing basically leaves the back of the building where the back of the site where it's running up to the Wareham River pretty much just turf more than anything. There wasn't. Losing my plan here.
Look at that, you asked a question that's destroying the plans.
That was my whole plan.
Yeah, the landscaping is basically perimeter landscaping across the frontage. The back is basically just to be grassed area. So we're calling it off as grass. I don't know if more grasses would be appropriate there as opposed to something that may require more fertilizers, but that's what we.
It just says lawn area, so I figured it's just simple, not a green type, golf course green type lawn, just
Yeah.
a lawn.
Right.
With not a lot of fertilizer.
Yeah,
Right,
and that's kind of the way we're looking at it. I know that the people on the opposite side of the Wareham River, you know, they're interested in seeing the view of the structures and what have you. I know that the people On Main Street, there's been some discussion with them as well as far as what the viewscape would look like from their properties. So that's what we put on the plan is basically perimeter landscaping with not much on the waterfront.
Anything else?
And I think, erosion control, but I mean, I think you guys are gonna have a good handle on that when it's all said and done.
There should be an erosion control plan in here
Next page,
somewhere.
I'm sorry.
next page.
It indicates how we're gonna handle that. We're showing construction entrances on each end of the site. And we show our perimeter siltation barriers that will basically isolate everything from the river.
I found it very confusing. It says see note 3, but then there's 3 sections of notes, and it's awful hard to say which note we were referring to, but that's just having to read the notes.
I think that what they're referring to
Is that one?
These notes
It's
over here,
it's
not the
through all
general
the
notes
pages,
on-
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else, Kwame?
No, thanks. Thank you.
Michael?
Kwame actually beat me to it with a landscaping question, so I'm good. Go ahead.
My concern is that there are several catch basins, one at the end of Cedar Street and one near the other entrance. How are you going to be able to handle the runoff that exceeds the limit of the catch basins onto this property? I mean, right now, we had a stormwater plan for Bessie Park to handle the flow of water coming down Lower Main and Cedar, and that got tabled. To me, if they're flooding now, overflowing the catch basins, it's going to impact this property and your plans to put them in those 2 areas.
Yeah, Cedar Street's very steep. There is a bunch of water that comes down there. There's some water that runs down Main Street as well. We have another, there is a catch basin further up gradient. There's another catch basin in front of our property. So there's a couple of catch
There's 2 of
basins.
them, yeah.
There's a couple of catch basins there. I suppose that,
It's just something to consider, because if they're not maintained by the town, they're going to easily overflow like they are now.
yeah.
Okay. The question I have is that you have your concrete chambers for flow diffusion thingies, and they'll be on the ground, but I don't see a path going out to the docks. How are people going to walk from where they park to the docks?
They can walk right over any of this lawn area. It's
So
gonna be
they're going to be
open lawn
walking
area.
on the lawn, there won't be any sidewalks or anything like that for them?
Well,
There's one little sidewalk by the proposed building, but that doesn't go all the way down to the existing concrete walk that's along the pier. It is hard to believe there isn't a method of getting between the pavilion and the restaurant and the pavilion and the proposed building to get to the concrete walkway, to get to the docks. Just that it's a concern that we really need to show a method of them getting their carts and stuff like that to their boats, and I don't see that here at all.
okay.
Do you want to ask the questions that were submitted, Ron?
Yeah, there wasn't too much on this one. If memory serves, the open pavilion was to be used during summer season for weddings, etc., and the restaurant year-round. Is this still the case?
Is that sort of what we're looking for?
Okay. So then the rest of it, landscaping, they said they did not see landscaping, was looking for more definition. But I think we kind of talked about that with just the green space out behind, just being open grass. And that's all that they had asked on this project.
Thank you. Is there anybody in the audience who would like to comment on this project? Keep in mind that it's to be, one more?
Do you wanna hit this side
Oh,
of the
yeah,
building?
sorry. Carol?
No questions, thank you.
Ron?
I don't have any questions. I'm gonna, now that I see the plans, I'll be able to look at it a little bit more. I know we're gonna get continued, so I'm sure I'll have questions at the next hearing.
Thank you. I saw a couple hands. Please you're going to be reminded that we'll only talk about those issues associated with wetland, our wetland bylaws, nothing else.
I see is it Mr. Titlebaum?
Good evening. Peter Titlebaum. I support the project. I think some of the questions tonight were fair. I think the sidewalk access is a good point. People are bringing their, carts, coolers, whatever. It would be nice if they have like a sidewalk and a rolling surface to bring them along. It'll be better for the customers of the marina. This area, I know from an environmental perspective, there was a lumber yard there for over a century. It's been a channelized river down there for probably 200 years. It's a well-disturbed area, and this kind of project fits in. I don't see it as being deleterious to the environment or the water quality down there in any form. I know that the proponent has spent a lot of money doing environmental remediation down there, cleaning up things that were found in the soil, getting rid of structures that were dilapidated. So he's done a yeoman's work down there to clean up a site that frankly hasn't been used since I used to go with my grandfather to grill lumber in like 1966 to get by paint. So, this is a great opportunity to get a project in that isn't going to harm the environment. It's not going to disturb land that isn't already disturbed. Stormwater is an issue everywhere. But I'm sure that there can be an accommodation between the proponent and the commission on how stormwater is handled. So I would look forward to the commission approving this project once they get the town engineer's report and can go over a few more details. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bob, I saw your hand up.
Bob Blair, Chairman of the Wareham Historic District Commission. We haven't had a chance to review the revised plans, but I just wanted to reiterate some of your concerns about the walkways to the boats and the landscaping, which we would also like to take a look at. We did approve previous plans for the site and generally support the project, but we will need to see any revised elevations.
Okay. They will be, when we have them, they will be available in the Conservation Commission office if you'd like to. Angie, I saw your hand up.
Thank you. Angela Dunham, Chair of the Wareham Historical Commission. I strongly support this project. I think that other people have already brought the key points that I would have brought forward. As far as that being previously disturbed property, I think it's a wonderful project for the downtown commercial area. The owner has done, as Mr. Titlebaum spoke, due diligence to attend to or to address the environmental concerns. So I strongly support this project going forward.
Thank you. Anybody else would like to comment? Ken?
Just that the planning board in the site plan review relies on the Conservation Commission to make a determination as to the acceptability of the project before they can approve the site plan review. So we'd like to have that information from you as soon as possible.
And we'll see the revised plan at the next meeting. We're going to continue this until the 19th. So we'll see what the revised plan looks like. And yes, I know that the bylaws say that we got to do our job first before planning can do theirs.
That's right.
Mr. Swenson has been in touch with me to make sure that I'm aware of that. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
The gentleman in the back, please. I do not know who you are.
I'm a local neighbor.
Okay, come forward and identify you for the record.
My name is Hugh Harp, resident 5 Turner Ave, Hamilton Beach.
Mm-hmm.
And I support the project 100%. And coming from this gentleman earlier this evening, awesome, this really stood out. about this project,
Yes,
and we're this close.
yes, we are.
And I have two questions. About the sidewalk, it's going to be a lot easier than constructing this project, that's for sure. And as far as lawn fertilizer you had mentioned, beautiful red Cape Cod grass surrounding the pavilion with no fertilizer needed. I think that would be a good stop of erosion as well. So that's it.
Thank you. Mr. Slavin.
Come on down.
Good evening, Alan Slavin, Selectman of the Town of Wareham. Also a bunch of other things that I do outside the area. This project is kind of like an anchor piece for the long-term redevelopment of downtown Wareham, for Main Street, for a boardwalk, which you've already laid out probably 4 years ago. And it's a critical piece to get done. There's full support from town administration on this. It's really an important piece to basically jumpstart this whole program. We have infrastructure money coming down over the next 18 months. These monies will be available one time. We may not see the money again for 10 years. So this is something we need to basically not rush through, but we need to get this done and over with and not delay and delay. Because,
We haven't even had one continuation yet.
Mr. Slavin, let me finish. Thank you.
As long as you keep it to wetland bylaws.
I am. So all I'm trying to get at is that this is a really important piece for the long-term project, which there'll be other pieces coming before you. So I'm asking that if you're hiring an engineer, to make sure we get it done, because we really don't have a town engineer. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else would like to comment on the project? I'm seeing none. Mr. Madden, do you think the 19th will be soon enough for a revised plan?
Yes.
Okay.
Motion to continue the hearing to January 19th.
Second.
A
Second.
motion and a second, all in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstained, is continued until the 19th. Thank you very much.
Thank you all very much for your time.
Pursuant to the provisions of the Massachusetts Wetland Protection Act, General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Wareham Wetland Protective Bylaws, Division 6, a public hearing will be held in Room 320, Wareham Multi-Service Center, 48 Marion Road, Wareham, Massachusetts, or via Zoom if in-person meetings are deemed to be inappropriate due to COVID-19, on Wednesday, January 5th, 2022, at 6:30 p.m. on the notice of intent for Richard Colbert, care of GAF Engineering, Inc., 266 Main Street, Wareham, Massachusetts, 02571, to remove existing retaining walls and fencing and to install new precast concrete block retaining walls located on Assessor's Map 7B-3, Lot 230, 7 Gitchigimi Road, Wareham, Massachusetts.
Madam Chair, for the record, Bob Rogers with GAF Engineering. With me this evening is Joe Agrillo, the contractor for the project.
Hello.
Thank you. Mr. Bichette?
This project site is at 7 Gitchigumi Road, and the project involves removing and replacing retaining walls along a coastal bank, salt marsh, and within a coastal flood zone. Existing retaining walls are to be removed, and 2 new concrete block retaining walls are to be installed as indicated on the plan. The piece of wall that is right up against the marsh, which is basically a very low brick wall, is to be removed completely and not replaced. The edge of that disturbance would be stabilized so that it could just grow in with natural vegetation. In terms of the 2 new walls, which would be approximately 45 feet in length, the lower wall would be about 5 feet in height, and the upper wall looks to be about just about a foot or so high. So I did have a question about that upper wall as to whether or not that's actually really necessary, or could that be stabilized in some other way, versus putting that in. Maybe that just could be described a little bit about that part of it. The disturbed slopes would then be stabilized with loam and seed and erosion control blanket until vegetation establishes on those slopes. So I would recommend natural vegetation instead of turf grass on the sloped areas. Erosion control would be installed between the work and the resource area. We did get a DEP file number for this project. I'm okay with the project in general, so I would recommend that the project ultimately be approved, but I just did want to hear a little bit about that upper wall and how necessary that actually is.
Okay,
Okay,
Madam Chair?
yep.
So the plan that you see, it's a two-part plan where the upper portion is straight existing conditions, and I highlighted in red the three existing retaining walls, and then there's a fence with a batter board that's sort of acting like a small retaining wall. And then the two walls that would go back would be these big block keystone gravity walls that don't require any tiebacks and so forth. One of the concerns that we had with this piece of property, and I believe we're also calling for repairs to the foundation as part of this project. There's a note for repairs to the foundation. And this, one of the concerns is for the stability of the soil in the backyard adjacent to the house. And that's really the main function of this upper wall, is to put a vertical barrier of heavy concrete block just to prevent any more settlement or movement of the soil around that foundation. So the lower wall, would have about a 5-foot reveal, 10.5 top of wall, bottom of wall 5.5, and then it would just be, informal lawn, non-fertilized lawn, and as David said, the vegetation along the property line was probably going to see some marsh migrate into the property, which is probably what it was years ago at some point. But so that upper wall, you're not going to see it very much, just the capstone, but the purpose of that is really to stabilize the soil around the foundation of the home.
So what's the depth of that whole upper thing? Because right now, there's really not much there except maybe, a low wall. So what's required? How deep is that going to go? Just 1 or 2 courses, or what do you think on that?
Layers of blocks.
For that.
On the top
Let me
one?
hear your question again,
No,
ma'am.
that was, he's asking the same question I am. How many layers of blocks on the upper wall?
So we're calling for the top of wall at 15.5, bottom of wall varies. We do have a 14. I think that's where David is referencing the 1.5 foot. But so how many blocks would we go below grade, Joe?
Okay.
Just like
So for
the footer.
soil stabilization, do you mind, is it okay if I talk?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. So for soil
Why, can you hear him?
Yeah, you need to just talk into the mic.
Oh, okay.
That's all. We'll just switch.
All right. So for soil stabilization, like what Bob was referencing, the base of this wall will be buried about equal to the height of the top block on the lower wall. So it would come in laterally and it would go up. Then we're going to fill this slope for the landscape grade. You can't put a base block, it puts a surcharge on the wall. That wall will sag down the hill eventually if it's not interlocked with the base, the lower wall. So again, it would come in, and I know Bob did mention these blocks are gravity blocks. In a case like this, when we get to this top block, there would be a geogrid, more than likely, well, he shows a fabric right there, but there'd be a fabric, geogrid fabric, going back under that first block, and then that wall would get built. But, I mean, we saw this as the elevation being, the finished elevation being the important part of that for the
Well, I'm just looking at it more in terms of the level of disturbance that you're talking about having to do to get that upper wall in is pretty significant. You gotta tear that whole bank apart.
So even to get this wall in, and why we chose these blocks was, these are pre-manufactured off-site, they come in all made up, no cement trucks, no pump truck getting material out there. To get these blocks in, we're gonna bring a mini-size excavator, just big enough to lift these. We're gonna bring that in. This has to get excavated and shelved down, if you would, where we have to create a flat area across, a shelf, if you would, across this area to set these blocks. We're gonna work from the high side, set those blocks, then we'll fill that. We gotta work our way out, just like we'd paint the floor, we gotta work our way out this way. Set these blocks, and as we're building this wall, when we get to height, we'll be filling this as we work our way backwards. Because once this is filled to a slope, there's no machine in there anymore at that point. This is a very tight site, and it's how the construction method would go on that.
To do that, what are you gonna do with all the material you have to move out of there to get the bottom wall in?
Everything has to be hauled off-site, and then we have to bring it back. There's no other way to do that. It's not like there's no way to pile it. Our access is very limited. There's gonna be a mini excavator and a track machine Bobcat. It'll carry the stuff out right into a truck. We'll dump it. My yard's over the bridge from here, but hopefully I can find something closer for a storage area. I'm sure I will. But at any rate, it gets hauled off. We'll bring it back as we put it together. There's no other choice with that.
Did you get answered? Are you comfortable?
And just for the reference, the full-size blocks are about the size of this table. The
They're the
footprint.
same size blocks, the same blocks that were used in that site over in Onset where the guy put the wall in
Oh,
incorrectly.
he couldn't do the corner, so he did it, never, okay.
You're not talking about Crab Cove Terrace, are you? Oh, okay.
No, off of Prospect in Onset.
So those are the size that he's talking about.
Okay. Carol?
No questions.
Ron?
I have no questions, just the stuff that. Sorry, I have no questions, just the stuff that I have in front of me from when we get to that.
Kwame?
No questions, thank you.
Michael?
So just to reaffirm here, you mentioned in one of the lines, you said something along the lines of, oh, here it is up here, that portions that you're building apparently this third wall that, I'm sorry, in this, I guess, I'm sorry, so it says right here that the project says in that paper that portions of the house foundation will be exposed to allow repointing, repairing, et cetera. So it sounds like we're going to try to prevent long-term, but I just want to reaffirm here. There's going to be a project for another foundation or for another repairing the house, let's just put it that way, some point down the road that the project doesn't mention?
Well, no, that's why we included this work as part of this notice of intent, so that it could be approved at the same time as the retaining wall. And so if you look at the plan, there's just kind of a heavy line, like a U shape, for the portion of the foundation that's showing cracking. And so it's just, again, with the mini excavator, it's just excavating on the outside of the foundation, exposing that block wall, and repointing is just, repairing the mortar and possibly replacing.
Yeah, so part of this project does include fixing the foundation.
So,
That's part of this
right.
project, yeah.
Might add, currently, the condition of the foundation, there's been just a little bit of settling, and there's some cracks in the foundation that indicate they go along with how it's settled. The amount of repair needed right now and for the short-term future is simply digging and exposing the cracks and repointing those, filling the joints in with cement. If they do this in a timely fashion, they'll prevent that foundation from sagging further down the hill, because that's exactly what's happening, is it's just,
It seems like a pretty steep.
it's given into gravity,
I tried to go out there,
basically.
but it was just pouring and it didn't get a whole.
Right, and to not start at the bottom and fix this correctly, they'll never get it right. And they're willing to take the step if you guys approve this, and also, like Bob had pointed out, pulling that wall back out of the marsh that really shouldn't be there. that we picked up on right away and are more than willing to do that. It's an obvious one, ma'am, very obvious, but,
The red bricks will all be removed manually?
I'm sorry?
The red bricks in that lower retaining area? Aren't they bricks?
The concrete blocks.
No,
It's red brick.
red
Well, there
brick.
might be some cap bricks on the wall.
Right, the
But
the
all of
wall,
that-
it's in the marsh, yeah.
All of that area will be removed manually? All that material?
Yes.
Stairs?
Yeah, you could do it with a sledgehammer and a wheelbarrow or whatever.
Yeah.
And then the existing retaining wall that seems to be made out of field stone will be broken apart, and also the lower.
One is field stone and,
Yeah, that middle one, the newer one, is concrete block. And
yeah,
and then-
block, field stone and block again, I
So
believe
that
it
field
was.
stone wall will be taken down, broken into smaller pieces, and removed manually?
Yeah,
No,
with the help of the mini excavator.
Yes.
Yeah.
But that excavator will not go down the banking, will it?
No, the limit of work for the excavator will not be past the front of this wall. It will stay on the backside here. When I explained we have to
Okay.
dig a little bit
Yep.
of a shelf, we have to create a flat area for that machine to sit on.
You also have to, as you come by the house, that is a nasty slope, so you'll have to accommodate that drop in the elevation from the front of the house to the backyard.
That we don't have, we can drive down a hill as long as we're side to side level. That we have no problem here.
Okay, or back up it, or
And,
whatever.
right, yeah, we can go up and down the hill that way. It's a cross slope that we can't work on to set that wall. And might I just add, is like, as far as removing that, we have a mini excavator here. We can swing the bucket out to a point about where my fingernail is and just set it down on the ground, and as we break
then
those
load it.
blocks by hand, we're gonna put them in the bucket and swing them up to the waiting Bobcat, which would be about as far as the Bobcat gets with the track is right here on this corner. And then that will make the trip,
Now, all this material will be removed from the site?
absolutely,
Okay, someplace.
absolutely, without a problem. I put my reputation on these jobs also,
Is
and
there anybody in the audience would like to speak to this project? Yes, please come up forward and identify yourself.
Good evening. My name is Amy Worth, and I'm the direct abutter to this project, and I just had a couple of,
Which street number are you?
well, 1, 5, and then the 2 lots in front. I'm on the corner.
Okay.
We're on the corner. You're absolutely right that this is an extremely steep grade of soft earth, which actually flooded this morning with the high tide. One of the retaining walls is currently crossing our property line. So I did have a request for the order of conditions that any of the land that's disturbed be restored to its natural condition. And also that my surveyors had planted a property marker, and I'm requesting that GAF would replace that at their expense to mark the property. I tried to identify where it was. I don't know if it has sunk down into the marsh, but it is in that area. And could you please show me which side of the house you're going to be putting this front
gonna
end
be doing
loader?
what?
Which side of the home you're going to be utilizing
for the access,
for the access?
well,
'Cause
if I think you're the neighbor you described, it's probably gonna be on your side. It's on
Right.
this side. This being the marsh, this is the side that we
Right.
will get the access
There's
from.
only approximately 8 feet there, so,
And we have enough room.
Okay.
We'll be fine. The Bobcat's 5.5, 6 feet wide with the bucket, so we can fit through there. We've already explored this.
okay. So basically, anytime that you're crossing the property line, I'm just
If
requesting.
anything gets disturbed, something rolls away, we will immediately clean it up, and your property will be as good as it
Right.
was,
No,
without
it's
a problem.
pretty wild conditions at this point in time, but I was concerned about the erosion on that hill. And then the materials that are on there. There's a mixture of building materials, homemade building materials, in the good old days when they
Yeah,
built stuff in the summer
right.
and left in the
Like that
winter.
wall in the marsh, yeah.
Right, yeah, and it had a good couple of feet in that area, so it's very soft, so I have,
Be prudent to say you guys are gonna come stake this out at some point, or?
It's whatever you need, yeah. If you
Yeah,
can't-
I mean,
can't work off
if
the house
we-
and benchmark, we can-
If we need a a mark or a
Right,
location we can
there's a mark up by Gitchigumi Road, but the one off the corner of the lower retaining wall,
We don't want to do it twice. We'll have
Right.
those guys come out and put a stake without a problem.
a concrete marker, because
Um,
that's what was planted
They have a
before.
There was a concrete bound there,
Down there and off the corner of
but
the.
it should be there
the-
then still.
Right,
So,
but I don't know, if you're removing that material, it's gonna
well, if
probably
we can find
disrupt
it before it gets broken,
Right, or-
we'll search for it.
Or have one put in
Or
so
we'll have
that,
these guys come stake out the job.
that would be
for sure.
great,
Usually the small jobs, we have them staked out anyways, because there's no room for error.
right.
As far, I don't want the phone call from you or your surveyor saying that the wall's on your property, and I'm sure you guys don't want to hear
Right.
that either.
Well, one of the walls is currently on,
Yes,
crosses the
you can
property.
see that in the
Yeah.
description. That
And
won't
I
be
don't
that
want
way when we're
anybody-
done.
Yeah, and I don't want anybody to get hurt.
Okay,
Speak into the mic.
Speak into the mic.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, right.
thank you, Mr. White.
The technical advisor in the back.
Yes. We're on television, so they
Okay.
can't hear
I
you.
see.
Okay. So those are just the concerns, and I was just going to request that those would be written into the order of conditions so that it was part of the plan.
So any disturbed land to be restored and the lot marker to be
To be replaced, yeah,
replaced if needed, yep.
yes.
Yeah, if needed, because it might be there.
It might be there. I tried to find it, but I don't know how soft that earth
We'll give it a good
is.
look.
And it might have sunk further in. I'm
Okay.
not positive, so,
Thank you.
thank you.
Any other comments? And I know, Mr. Shet, you had a question?
Well, I was going to actually ask before it was brought up, that whole area that you're going to disturb to put these walls in, on that particular side, there's that slope against the neighboring property, and I was going to say, how are you going to maintain that piece of land from caving in?
On this side here,
Yes, down below where you're doing the work.
when we come down, we do have enough level area here. One of the things that can happen if we need to, and I don't have a good picture of this in my mind right now, if we had to, we could lower this temporarily, dig some of this dirt out just to drop us down a little bit, that
I'm talking about more where the walls are.
down here.
Yeah, now their neighboring piece of land, you're gonna be cutting into that slope. How are you gonna maintain that while this is all being done?
And it's like a sponge. It was underwater today.
Which I was about to ask, has that been happening in the past, say, 4 months? I don't need to cut anybody off, I was just
The
curious.
past 4 months,
Let's say 4 or 5 months, have you been getting a lot of floods lately?
sure. I mean, it happens on a regular basis, depending on the moon tide and the.
Which I was about to ask, because there have
Right.
been moon tides lately.
It happens on moon tides, it happens when there's storm surges that are, identified on the news. It does occur. In fact, the water came up to Wychunas Ave today. And then we have 4 lots, and that corner lot that has butts to the retaining walls was under a couple of feet of water or more. I didn't measure it, but it was obliterated. So that's really soft turf that's going to put your machines at risk.
We'll be fine, that's why when you hear me mention the track machine, these aren't rubber-tied machines.
Right.
They do fine in the sand.
And I don't know the exact grade, but it's not a gradual grade.
It gets steep, yes.
Yeah.
So Dave, to answer your question about working this slope, so when we come down this way and we get in here, we will have this bank on our side, so to speak. The way this wall's gonna run, I mean, we're gonna have a little bit of dirt exposed, but nothing substantial that we won't be able to maintain, and there may be a little hourglassing of some, if we get that real fine sugar sand, but we'll be able to put the blocks in and put that right back in place,
So you'll keep,
almost simultaneously.
so you'll keep the cut a few feet on the other side of the property line. As where you're digging out, you'll keep that edge a couple feet onto your property.
Yeah, we'll work this way, and as we get up to it, this will get dug and the blocks set all within the same day, say. So we're not gonna leave that overnight with like an open cliff. There'll never be a open cliff there to any degree. our bigger risk or our biggest risk on that is more like the deck and the footings there. We have to watch out for those, and that's within our own property, but this, I don't have any real worries with. And again, anything that gets disturbed, it will be fully restored, and if there is anything that's over the lot line, there may be some minor
And that-
spillover, but
yeah.
we'll address that, and I'll make sure you're the neighbor, I'll come over and see you and make sure you know you're on board with everything that's
Sure.
going on. Assuming it gets approved, and I'm still the contractor for the job, of course, but,
Do you have a business card?
not with me, but I'll make sure you get one.
While you're doing that, we have some questions.
Yeah, so a couple of things from Denise and Elisa. The first thing that they pointed out is that there were no stakes for them to see where the project was going to happen. Also, the next comment was, it appears that the two lower levels, which include two retaining walls, have actually encroached on the wetlands. The resident has taken over property that they do not actually own. So where are those property lines, and how is that going to be addressed?
Right, so you can see the property lines on the plan, and so we are fully removing the lower wall, that red brick wall that's encroaching. And you know, it's another situation where, you know, I guess we felt like we had enough existing features, and specifically those existing walls that were being removed, that, you know, I mean, we'd be staking that upper wall right along where that fence is, and the lower wall is pretty close to where the other one is. So we didn't think that it would be necessary to stake out the proposed walls with so many existing features there.
So
But,
the walls
you know,
the walls that they're talking about encroaching into the other property, those are going to be removed and pushed back. Is that?
well, just removed and taken off site.
Okay. And then they said there are 4 drainage pipes in the second wall that empty into the last tier. Where are they coming from, and does that impact the wetlands?
I don't know for certain, but I'm guessing that they're either roof drains or perimeter drains. I don't know if you know, Joe.
They be
I
removed?
don't recall there being downspout drains, pipes on the house, but those, if there's pipes there, they won't be there when we're done. We won't put those through.
So they're being removed, and they're going to be.
They'll definitely be removed. If there is a downspout drainage system, we'll put a dry well in.
Okay.
You can make that a note on the order and conditions if
You
you'd
got
like. We don't have a problem with that.
Yeah, definitely. If it's runoff coming from somewhere, we obviously want to make sure that if those are being removed, that
Yes.
the
Oh,
runoff's being
absolutely, 'cause
addressed.
The runoff's the worst thing for the retaining walls also to
Oh yeah,
have
because
that.
you don't want to have, you know, down the road you're getting a call from the homeowner saying, hey, my wall's gone.
Right.
Because we got
And
rid of
it's-
something that.
As far as the wall goes, with the crushed stone, the way these are built, they're self-draining. They don't actually need any weepers to go through them. This is a permeable setup, if you would, where these will take care of their own water, but we don't want to introduce additional water.
Yeah, no,
just-
so it'll
Just like always, yeah.
Yeah, it'll definitely be noted in the conditions if it's
Yep.
approved to make sure that if it is, that there's some type of a dry well or something
Yeah.
to mitigate that issue.
Yep, that
but-
won't be a problem at all.
Those were the comments from them on that project.
Anybody else to comment on the project? Are we continuing?
Somebody in the back.
Yep. Yes, please. Yes, Nancy.
Thank you. Nancy McHale. I just have a question of knowing that this property is down near Red Brook Road, or Red Brook, the Lyman Reserve, what time of the year is this going to happen, and will there be any negative impact to the migration of the sea run brook trout?
Well, I'm assuming, you know, you're going to want to do this in the near future, but there's nothing that's going to be getting into or near the marsh even. So you're not going to have any impacts from this project to migrating fish.
Just checking.
Yeah, definitely not as far as that goes.
Okay.
Timing-wise, it's going to be a little hard to say exactly. We know we don't want to do it in the summer months because they want to use the property. we're hoping to do it over the winter period. Winter's slipping away fast here.
If there is a problem with migrating fish, then he's in trouble.
You bet, right?
Okay, like I said, it's hard to figure out exactly where stuff is when the plans aren't on the Concom site, but I appreciate it and wanted to speak up for the brook trout.
That was it?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, great.
Are we continuing it or making the decision? Was there a reason to continue?
I would say you could approve the project and issue an order with the conditions that we've discussed.
I see no one else to comment.
Motion to close the hearing?
Second.
We have a motion to close the hearing in a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained. The hearing is closed.
So I'm going to take a crack at this?
Take a crack at it.
All right, so I make a motion to approve the project with the standard order of conditions, with the added conditions, first of the 4 drain pipes that are in the current wall. If they are coming off of some type of drainage, that dry wells will be put in to mitigate that runoff so that it doesn't cause any impacts to that wall in the future. What else did we have in there that was brought
Any
up?
disturbed land to be
Any
restored.
disturbed land on the abutter's property would be restored
And
to
the
its natural
lot
state.
And the lot marker to be replaced if needed.
And the lot marker that was put in by the surveyor, if it can be found, if anything happens to it, that it would be replaced.
Got it covered? That's the motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained. You got it. Before you do
Great.
any work, see Mr. Pichette for your paper.
All right, thank you
papers.
very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We
Have a
got
good
one
evening.
done.
you.
We got one done. All right. Okey dokey. We have continued hearings. LSC Hydro, we have a request to continue until 119.
Motion to continue till 119.
Second.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained. The next one is Deborah Kovaris. Koshevich, we have a request to continue.
Oh, do we have a date?
I don't remember seeing a date.
119.
So
19.
motion to continue to 119.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained. It's continued until January 19th. The next one is Mike Conley. We have a,
Mark,
Mark Conley.
what did I say, Mike?
Mike.
I know.
It's an M.
Easy not to forget. Go ahead.
Mark Conley, and was it also the 19th?
They requested to February 2nd.
Motion to continue to February 2nd.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained. We have a David Andre,
Andrade.
and
they've requested to February 2nd as well for their continuance.
Motion to continue to February 2nd.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained. It's continued into February 2nd. Is there anybody here for Wareham MA 3, the Faring Hill project? I see no one here. Motion to continue until the 19th.
Motion to continue to 119.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained. Let's hope he shows up the next one. We have Wareham PV. We have not received a continuance, but there's nobody here.
Motion to continue to 119.
Second.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, is continued until the 19th. That's all our hearings. Anything else anybody wants to talk about? Mr. Bichette, something?
No, I don't have anything further necessarily. I do have a couple of documents to sign that didn't get signed at a previous meeting that we approved, so I would just like to pass those around.
Do we have the document for the one that we just approved? Because that hasn't come this way.
That has not come this way, so let's do that. Actually, I don't have that one, so we're gonna have to hold off and sign it after the fact, because I did not bring that.
Okay. Do you want us to come by the offices?
You could do that, yes.
When you have a chance, swing by Mr. Bichette's office to sign that approval we just handled.
It can be
Okay.
done.
Okay.
And we will get it, we will be getting a form in order to use to confirm that we, for those that missed a meeting.
Watch the
have-
previous meet,
have
watch the
watched
meeting.
Previous meeting, so we're up to date on all discussions and what's been approved. That will be coming. Anything else?
Meeting or not meeting, but I think one of the questions, and hopefully we don't have to do this, but Zoom meetings.
Yeah, that's a good point, because I've had several people ask about this, and given the circumstances, how does the commission want to proceed with meetings?
It will be your recommendation. It's not on the agenda, so we can't really take a vote, but I'm in favor of a Zoom meeting until things improve. Kwame?
Unfortunately, I'm going to have to say aye.
Michael?
Same thing with Kwame. I enjoy meeting in person, but, well, I guess things took get
Carol?
better.
Yeah, I have to agree.
Yes? Mr. Bessie?
As much as it would pain me to say that we need to be in person because some of these projects are important, I think that we could potentially lose some feedback from abutters and other folks that might have comments on projects because they don't feel comfortable about coming out. So I do think that at the next meeting, we need to have a discussion and make a determination on it. But I do think that right now, especially with the state of the amount of cases that are coming out, as much as I would say, no, we need to stay in person, I think that for the safety of the people of the town, it would make the most sense that we would.
Yeah, we don't need to have, let's say, a formal vote. We
Nope.
can just decide to have it a Zoom meeting, and next meeting will be a Zoom meeting, if that's everybody's feeling,
But
which I
that's-
think it sounds like it is, so.
Yeah, we can't vote because it's not on the agenda, but we're looking for input, and the input is that we go back to Zoom meetings, and so you can do it from your house like you have in the past.
Yes. Yeah, no, so I will set that up, and that's how our next meeting will go.
So, our January 19th.
Will
And
be
we
via
will
Zoom.
continue in Zoom until we make a comment that we feel more comfortable coming back.
Yeah, I mean, I think we'll just have to take it,
Yeah.
meeting by meeting, and not to say that I think this is going to disappear in 2 weeks, but
Nope.
Right.
it would be nice, but unfortunately, we don't get to control that, so
Right, right.
I think it
right.
makes the most sense.
Anything else?
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, everybody.
Year.
And
Motion to close the hearing. Motion to close the meeting.
Second.
I have a motion.
Second.
I have a second. All in favor? Yes.
Aye.
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 Aye. Thank you very
Aye
much,
and aye.
everybody. Appreciate you coming out.